Hi there, it's Dr. JOYLYN Sparkles, and welcome to your Power Hour. This is your time to put what's on your mind on my mind, and we will put our heads and hearts together and come up with a way to go from whatever level of stuck to happy as fuck in a short amount of time as possible. Let me make sure the volume's all good there. Okay, so on location, this is in between the move, going from one state to the next, and so I look kind of like a science teacher with my background, don't I? So we're going to talk a little bit about science, maybe. But today, welcome is Power Hour. I'm going to get it up on the big screen so I can read comments and stuff. This is a lot of it directly informed by several client interactions this week. So these things kind of come up and a couple of questions. So bringing them to you. But today, first of all, is a very, very special day. Today is March 29th, and it is a happy birthday to one of our celebrated members, Shelly, who is my sister and very, very special to me. And I, just wanted to give a little shout out and sort of opening with, we're talking about dealing with feelings today. And when we get on this journey, I started to realize that everything is actually a learned skill, including emotional handling. And a lot of us are coming from dysfunctional households, maybe even abusive situations, empath, narcissist dynamics, things like that, to where, or we're just very sensitive, emotional beings and have really big feelings. I know that one. And so when you're trying to, grapple with some of this stuff and getting awareness that even some of the feelings are getting in the way, but how do you do it different? And you haven't had a lot of good modeling as far as how to feel your feelings, deal with your feelings, how to get perspective on them, put them in their place so you can keep moving. And recognizing that there's skills, but then what we need is guidance, either a coach and or a model. And my sister Shelly has been one of my models for how to be calm, because for somehow she magically got a little bit different background than I did, and so operates differently with her feelings than me and some of my other sisters do. And so I finally found a model for how to handle and be calm in stressful situations. And also, I think it's so fabulous that even though we're sisters, we have very different human designs, and me being a very much emotional authority and having these big feelings that come all the time, and she has a much different constitutional makeup, and so she does not have that level of intensity of feelings. And so she's actually a really good, Shelly, I'm talking to you, happy birthday, I love you, is a really good guide for a different way of handling emotions, like just seeing another possibility. I can only be me, but I can also see there are other ways of dealing with your feelings that aren't just stuffing them down, which is what I saw in my family. And then not making them the biggest deal in the whole wide world and taking them all as truth, because as I've talked about before, feelings aren't facts, and she has a good way of sort of walking that balance. And so it's been nice to have finally somebody that I can sort of just observe. It's not even that we have to have big, in-depth conversations, but I can kind of just see somebody operate differently with and through their emotional ups and downs, and see, okay, here's where I need to do it my way, here's where I can relax a little bit, but here's a healthier way of rolling with them. Or just, something to add, just broadening the skill set. So putting that out there, that everything is a learned skill, including emotional handling. And so having a coach or some sort of teacher, book, whatever reference to help you understand and grapple with this, and then also start putting it out in your prayers and in your intentions to have models of different ways start to show up. Because the reason you're not doing it already is because you weren't shown how. It's not about you being wrong or incapable. It's just you were not taught it or modeled it, which is what early childhood imprinting does, okay? And those people will start to show up. Caution here. Sometimes we'll see those people in our lives and get jealous and then start to give them a narrative that their life is easier than ours, or that they are not handling it well because they're not making it the biggest deal, and really just then start to be curious about perhaps you actually are getting what you asked for and just seeing another way of being in the world, okay? And then ask, you know, you take what you like, leave the rest. What can I use here? What's useful to me and what will help things work better for me, okay? Moving on. And a side note here, that if you also have someone in your life that you have a lot of gratitude for and an awareness that they have become some sort of mentor, model, example, and in a roundabout way, not by sitting there and instructing you, but just by being themselves, are showing you a new way of being, express that gratitude. Now, I know that a lot of us coming from dysfunctional backgrounds, enmeshment, codependency, empath, narcissist dynamics, that sometimes it is maybe a scary place to be really open with our feelings, not knowing how they'll be received, and hesitant to give an outpouring of love because we have been, or fear that we'll be taken advantage of. And as we get on, you know, in this power hour, we'll see that really the thing is that if you've got love, give it. It's not because you can't give it away. You can only give it if you have it to give. And sometimes it is through giving love that we start to recognize we have love in our lives and we have it to give. Now, what will lead to being taken advantage of and feel like you're being depleted is when we are attaching strings to that and expecting an outcome and doing it for someone else's benefit instead of doing it just because it's who we are and it's what we'd like to see more of in the world. Because when we give it that way, it's actually completely inexhaustible. It's coming from source. When we have an expectation or some sort of agenda or think that we're some sort of magnanimous person who's going to be a model for somebody else and it's our intent to be somebody else's model, we tend to get real sticky attachments, and that's when it kind of pulls and we can end up feeling depleted and resentful, okay? Just another note. But we are actually really talking about dealing with feelings, because there are a lot of us who are really sensitive, who do, perhaps, if you know human design, have an emotional authority, but all of us are human, and so emotions are part of this human experience. It's part of what makes us human. So we have to learn how to deal with them so that they're not running our lives, so we can actually get the information that they have to offer without it taking over and, you know, steering us off course, getting us super distracted, leading us because of our perhaps trauma stories, putting us into our heads so that we're not actually feeling them. We're just then creating narratives and thought loops around them and never actually getting the information or taking the action that we're sort of being guided to take in the direction of healing. So let's get on with it, shall we? All right. Emotions, feelings, and a lot of times these words are used simultaneously, and they sort of are. Technically, feelings actually lie within the realm of body sensation, and emotions are the more energetic experience, but because we're human, a lot of times they, you know, are sort of paired. They come together. So I'll use the word interchangeably for today, so let's not get bogged down by semantics. But our feelings are basically messengers. They are just information. They are not good or bad. A lot of us have been taught that some feelings are good, some ones are bad, and especially in this movement for self-growth, thinking that we're going to be moving up. Because, yeah, part of the goal and the work and the benefit of doing the work is to have more and more elevated emotions to where we are operating, enjoying, and living by and through and with elevated feelings, the gratitude, the joy, the happiness, the bliss, the connectedness and oneness. That's what we're going to be moving to, but so many of us are coming from much lower places of anger, hatred, guilt, fear, resentment, and things like that, and having to work through, and it isn't a linear process. Even though there is lots of literature, it even talks about the ladder of emotions, it's not like you just start at the bottom and go to the top. That would be great if we did, but this is a dance. And again, because a lot of us haven't had really strong, healthy models of what healthy emotionality is, it's a lot of back and forth dance and going back and forth. So knowing that it's not ever an indication of right or wrong, it's more just an indication of how connected we are to ourselves. It's a level of congruence, and to where the more elevated is when we are in congruence, we are feeling very attuned to ourselves, to our guides, to our higher self and our purpose and our meaning. And yeah, sometimes even, when you say it that way, like, wow, kind of self-centered, but it's when we're staying in our lane and we actually have an awareness that we, me, you, came as an individual to have an individual expression here, that there is something that we uniquely have to bring. And when we have some sort of sense or connection with that, we tend to feel very elevated, joyful, gratitude, oneness. And because we know that in there's worth, there's a lot less competition, so we don't get bogged down with the scarcity, the fear, the what other competitive, dislike, distaste, disgust, guilt, anger, worry, all those things. So not good or bad, not ever. Some of us were taught or conditioned that way because the lower emotions, when they come, and depending on the level of intensity, they tend to make ourselves and other people uncomfortable. Now, part of this is actually because at the bottom, we are all connected and we are loving, and it's hard to watch people struggle and suffer. And so sometimes in the attempt to end the suffering, we got the message to just turn it down. And so now we're actually having to come back and feel those feelings, process and metabolize them so they can actually move through us and we can be moved to take appropriate action. And some of it will be deconditioning and learning that it's actually okay to have all of our feelings. And then some of us who tend to be over-communicative, over-emotional, have to also learn how to balance getting the message from letting it take over our lives. Hi, I'm that person. So I know this well. No judgment. Also, when it comes to feelings, in general, they can be boiled down more or less to one word. When we say, and I've talked about this extensively in other power hours, I feel like or I feel that, we are actually starting to confuse opinions, possibly judgments, interpretations, and perceptions with actual feelings. So the best that you can, when it is trying to get clear on a feeling, get it down to one or two words, because you won't feel like or feel that. You're just going to feel happy, sad, glad, mad, all the ones that rhyme and more, okay? And then also be aware that even though you're human, you're infinite, so you can have more than one at a time. That's why things like, in particular, death can be very confusing, because although we are sad and have some grief with a loss, we might actually be happy and grateful that the person is no longer suffering or in pain, that they are reunited with other loved ones and their higher self so that they can feel a deeper sense of connection that maybe they were having struggle with on this plane. Let's see, breakups can very much be that. You're very, very sad, and sometimes there can be a lot of insecurity that comes up, and then sometimes still this sort of gentle nudge that says this is for the better, but there's a sadness for what was that's never going to be. So there's always, we can have more than one at a time. And when it comes to other people, I always try, our human brains want to put them in the black and white, good or bad categories. You are good for me, you are not good for me, and it is annoying as fuck when people don't fit into that box. Because as soon as I put them in the box, then they do something nice for me, and then as soon as I say, all right, you're out of the box, then they go do something nasty. Because you know what? We're people, and guess what? They aren't the only ones. You, me, we are also peoples, and we will also be healthy and unhealthy, loving and assholes at different times to ourselves and to other people, okay? So it's complex, it's confusing, no question about it, but totally navigable, learnable, and improvable. Isn't that great? Fantastic. All right. Then, they are also emotions they're sort of just bridges. They are bridging, and there's what's called a cybernetic loop to where your emotional state will color and characterize your thoughts, and then you will start thinking thoughts that will bring in more of that emotion. If you're looking to change it, you can change either your thought or your emotion. Isn't that neat? They also are, because they're messengers, they are our body's way of telling us. They are information about hot, cold, you're getting closer or further away from the truth of you. And so they're really sort of bridges between letting us know the health of our thoughts and our emotional or our spiritual connection, because we're actually always getting information, and when we're more connected with spirit, we tend to be more elevated, blissed out, and not giving a fuck about stupid little shit. Okay? Awesome. And last week, we talked about emotional addiction because, hey, that's a thing. Why? Because they are physical, they are chemical. We can become habituated and conditioned to them. So that this happens so early on when we're little sponges, and we just pick up from mom and dad and whoever is an authoritative source around us to say, oh, this is how you live. Ooh, this is how you feel. Ooh, this is what feelings mean. Ooh, these are the good ones to have, because not because they're actually good or healthy, because these are the ones you have all the time. So that's what I'm going to have all the time, so that I fit in, so that you like me, so that you keep me, so that I don't get banished and eaten by a bear. It's a survival trait. It got programmed and imprinted early on, but now you may be recognizing it doesn't feel good a lot of the time. And what you may or may not also be aware of is that when we are chemically addicted to an emotion, and this is never a conscious thing, we will actually start to co-create and communicate, and what's in the anatomy of peace he calls coercion. We will actually start operating in a way that will bring about more of that feeling by the limited belief that's underneath, so that if we're believing we're not worthy, we will communicate in ways that will, subvert or distract from our worthiness and get other people in some way to behave in a way that comes to us as evidence of our worthlessness, because we already believe it. And because we're sort of just habituated to the feelings of not being good enough, and whatever that feeling actually is, and whatever chemistry that actually is. So we start to operate and communicate that way, so that when we start breaking emotional addiction, like I talked about last week, a lot of our communication is going to have to change, okay? And we can get into that next week. I'm thinking that there seems to be a lot of empath narcissist stuff sort of coming up, so we'll be talking a lot about the communication boundaries and things like that next week as well. But what I'd really like to point out, as we're getting into how to actually deal with feelings, for you beautiful, sensitive, emotional people, the number one thing you got to ask from now on is, who does this belong to? And when we ask that question, I will tell you straight off the bat, the first thing you're going to do is be like, fuck you, JOYLYN, it's mine. Why do I even have to ask this? Or, screw you, because I don't know. I don't get anything. I don't get anything at all. It's going to be as clear as mud at the beginning. But by asking this question, we are actually allowing and acknowledging the possibility that maybe everything that's running through our bodies isn't actually ours to process, because your nervous systems are extra sensitive, because your survival trait was to be highly aware of the emotional states of the people around you in order to survive. That you have picked up so much and processed so much. Oh, and here's something that rarely people talk about. You haven't acknowledged your strength. That somewhere deep down inside, you know that the emotions aren't good or bad, and it's okay to have any of them, and you can withstand and deal with anything. But maybe you saw that other people struggled with that and had a lot of judgments about it and refused to feel some of their feelings. So you said, hey, I'll feel that for you and I'll process it for you. And it seemed like a nice thing to do. It seemed like it was a win-win. It would make sense. But actually, it doesn't ever work because it's not yours to process. So the person's always going to be left in some state of it's theirs. It's theirs to process. So you doing it can't do it for them, because we all have our own work to do. It also in some ways communicates a lack of trust in their ability to handle it. And you are never, ever going to get acknowledgement for how strong you are, because it's all happening subconsciously. And what it actually, again, that coercion and the co-creation of these dynamics actually just makes you look like an emotional basket case, and somebody who's always angry or always frustrated or always overwhelmed or always confused, because you're taking it on for other people, and it's hiding you from you. And so you're not going to get acknowledged for who you truly are, especially if you won't. So you've got to ask, who does this belong to? And it's not to find out whose it actually is, because the blame game is a boring, worn-out game where no one wins. And honestly, when you find out whose it is and you give it to them, it probably wasn't theirs to begin with either. And it doesn't actually matter. All you need to know is it's yours or not yours. At the beginning, it's going to be really confusing. A lot of them will feel like it's both mine and not mine. You just keep asking and then give it space. You ask, hey, who does this belong to? And then let it go, because you've actually just acknowledged there's a possibility that it might not all be yours. Give it a little space to breathe. What I used to be is, who does this belong to? Who does this belong to? Who does this belong to? Does it sound like I'm in a receptive state? Not so much. So that's a pearl of wisdom for you. Ask and then let it go. Okay? Then there's a million power hours with how to deal with emotional intensity, and also in Love Yourselves, a whole library of tools that is getting cultivated for you. So there's so much as far as honing the skill and really getting to it. And what I want to do, though, with the rest of this power hour is talk about one of the feelings that we all tend to struggle with as far as moving up the ladder of emotions, because it is so misunderstood and judged. And that's anger. Because anger, like all the other ones, is a messenger, but it has lots of different messages that it can be carrying, and a lot of different functions that it's actually allowing us to do, that if we don't acknowledge and we don't recognize that we're using it in this way, we just tend to stay angry. And a lot of us do have an addiction to anger, because with anger there tends to be a sense of power that we don't get in even lower states. Okay? So when it comes to anger, it can be one, all, multiple of these things. It's not always super clear cut. But the more that you are aware that some of these, there's subtleties and nuances with anger, you don't have to judge it and try to force it out of your life. There's nothing wrong with you for having it. But also you can get curious about what it's bringing you, so you don't have to hold it and keep it, because it will damage your cells if you keep holding on to it and expressing it. So one of the things that anger really often communicates to us is there has been a boundary crossing. There is a breach in integrity. Now, sometimes that is a lot of times that's a presence of a lie. And the first thing people do is, I'm being lied to. And the truth is, you are. But generally, the biggest perpetrator is you. Telling yourself a bunch of bullshit about who you are and what you can and can't handle. Because we learned how to be insecure. Because we learned not to stand out. Because maybe at one point our standing out elicited envy in another and got us some harsh criticism that was really uncomfortable and we didn't like it. So we've learned to downplay ourselves. There might have been a time where we didn't have all the information that we needed, and so we told ourselves we're stupid, and then we just ran away with that and just have been telling ourselves that for eons now. There's a lot of lies that we tell ourselves, because the truth is, you're infinite, you're perfect, you're human, so there's going to be some dance and learning in an ever-evolving process. And sometimes that will be judged, and we will be told that you're never content, you're never happy, you're always dissatisfied, as if that's something wrong, when really it might be an acknowledgement that the human part is always evolving and always expanding until it meets the infinite. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's a natural thing. And sometimes when people say that, we'll get really angry because it's a lie that we should just be stagnant or stationary, So being aware that a lie is present. And with that, a lot of it will be the limiting beliefs that we tell ourselves, again, about the identities that we are and the roles that we play. One of them that I just became aware of in the last hour to an hour and a half is sometimes the lie is when myself or someone else is operating solely within a role. I just had an appointment and the customer service person, it was so robotic. Like, she told me the same thing like 4 times that I was getting really angry, and I was like, what is going on here? Because I can feel it in me, like, what is going on here? And it was like she was sort of robotic. She wasn't actually operating as a fully expressed human being who could actually listen, be vulnerable, and have a complete answer. It was a default, I have to talk to my supervisor. Oh, I have to email this to my lead. Oh, I can't tell you anything. Like she was just afraid of getting in trouble and had no brain of her own. And it was getting like to the level of awareness that it felt like anger inside, you know? We will often do that because we can take on roles and be like, I'm only allowed to do this and I can't take initiative. I can't express this or that within my job role because I only have to be this. I'm only a mom. I'm only a sister. I'm only a daughter. And we will start to feel anger inside because we can't be all of who we are. Now, when sometimes we get to that level, because of the chemistry and patterning that goes along with it, a lot of times that will start to make us go into beta brainwave patterns that we're already generally operating with, but it might bring them down a little bit more, so that when we're saying, I'm in the role of daughter or sister, that's usually in relation to somebody else, and in beta brainwave patterns we'll start to look outside for the threat. That's just part of survival brain, so then we'll be like, it's them. It's my mom who's not letting me be all of me. It's my brother who's not letting me. I can only be this way when I'm a mom. I have to keep on my mom pants, or even sometimes our roles, like I'm a yoga instructor, so I can't cuss, or whatever it is. And we start to get angry at the other people and resentful of the other people when it's really us that has bought the lie that we are only a role. Okay, so be aware that these lies are sneaky, subtle, and quite honestly somewhat pervasive, okay? But a boundary, because there's a lack of integrity, and either we're allowing ourselves to be insecure or we're giving our power away when we're operating that way. Another thing that anger can really be communicating to us is the presence of a potency that we are unwilling to express. This one's exciting because this might be a lot of ours, because it has a resonance very similar to anger, because anger is an activating emotion. Anger is a motivator and it gets us, and so if there's a potency that we're unwilling to express, but we really know there's an action that we want to take or a way that we want to be, but we have to like get out of who we've always known ourselves as to do it, a lot of times there will be like this feeling of anger. It's actually just a rising intensity that's trying to push up and break through. And it's interesting because, again, because we might be, depending on what state of consciousness and where our brainwave patterns and what else is going on in our lives, that we'll often look at the other person and create a push-off situation, pick a fight, create an argument so that we can finally say that thing that we want to say, but we use anger to do it instead of actually just rising to the potency and being it. It might also make it self-aware, as sometimes it'll also have some, like a little extra of envy or irritation with other people. Oh my God, he's so obnoxious. When really it's, I wish I could be that outspoken, but I can't be that way in front of people. I wish I could be that selfish, but I just, you know, I can't. I'm just not good at picking and putting my needs first. I'm such a people pleaser. And so we get irritated with other people who are actually expressing the thing that we would like to, but tell ourselves that we can't because we don't know how, or we're waiting for some sort of permission from someone. So it will start to rise in intensity until our body, and we start to perceive it as anger. But again, we'll start to get angry with the other person, start attaching a narrative and get irritated with them, when really, if we start getting aware, is there a potency that I'm unwilling to express here, and have that be one of our questions, we might get to be like, yeah, I really just wanted to say this. I really just wanted to say, I need to go now. I really just wanted to say no, but I didn't. I really wanted to say yes, but I was afraid of it. I really wanted to tell this person I love you, but I'm super scared of what's going to come after that. You know, whatever it is, just be aware of, is there a potency here that I'm unwilling to acknowledge or express? That might be another reason that we're perceiving and feeling in our bodies anger. Another one, and these two kind of go together, so I'll kind of put them together because we're running out of time because I'm talking a lot, is a gatekeeper. Anger can be a gatekeeper for what I call the basement emotions of things like fear, sadness, grief, disappointment. They're the ones that they're the end of the line, and there's really nothing else to do but feel them, because whatever generally circumstance that has created is probably out of our control. You know, if somebody leaves, somebody breaks up with us, they pass away, we lose a job. It's things that maybe necessarily aren't like, at least immediately negotiable and we haven't gotten all the information, we just are recognizing an awareness of a loss, things didn't go the way that we wanted to, and there's really nothing to do except acknowledge that and feel that. But God, I hate that feeling. I hate it. So let me feel anger instead, because then I feel like there's something I can do. There's somebody I can be irritated at. I can stomp my feet. I can kick up dust. I can throw a lot of F-bombs, because that at least makes me feel better than feeling sad, because I just don't want to feel sad. I actually just don't want to acknowledge that something is over and there's nothing I can do about it, that I can't control this other person and convince them that I'm the most awesome person in the world and I should be in their life, or that they should love me appropriately and it's just sad, or that I can't tell them, please don't do this with your life because I don't want to see you hurt. Whatever it is, sometimes we'll tend to get angry so that we just don't have to feel that. Oh, and by that, we also might not want to feel that or the anger, so then we might eat. Hey, yeah. So starting to become aware, is this anger actually just masking one of the basement emotions, something that I just don't want to acknowledge or feel right now? And also, sometimes it can actually just be a hiding spot. I recognize that with my anger, I actually looked like the Tasmanian devil, like energetically, to where I was like, I'm invisible. People aren't hearing me. They can't see me. And it's because I was refusing to actually ever go to those depths and actually be the potencies that I wanted to be, that the anger also became a distractor, either from other emotions or other situations that I didn't want to deal with, but also distracted other people from seeing me. That I was hiding even myself from myself. So recognizing that this distraction mechanism of anger can be really convoluted. It can be hiding us from ourselves. It can be hiding us from other people, and just keeping us out of presence. And again, going back to the emotional addictions, it's one of the ways that our subconscious knows how to keep us alive, because if we're totally present and willing to receive whatever message that any and all of our emotions have, and willing to take action and remain in congruence with our soul's calling and our heart's desire, we are about 100% certain to move into the territory of uncertainty, and the subconscious is like, that's death. It's the same. It doesn't know. That's why in all of my programs we're talking about future forward focus, so that we start visiting that place of uncertainty and experiencing the feelings that we're going to have there, like Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, to where the uncertain actually becomes more familiar, so that your subconscious fights it less. So hey, there's a plug. Check out the Happiness Clinic programs, because they are solid as fuck as far as moving through this. Not just learning new ways to handle your emotions, but actually getting you out of what's everybody calls subconscious sabotage. Because we're actually going to start becoming familiar with uncertainty and learning how to roll with it, surf with it, dance with it, to where it's not so scary, to where we're going to start building some memories of that, to where your subconscious is like, oh yeah, I've done that before. It's not a big deal. But recognizing that anger sometimes is definitely one of those fallback positions, to where we can stay mad, we can stay in this narrative, we can stay in this refusal to actually express the potency that we want. We can just be in resistance and reaction to lies that we're telling ourselves or that are coming from us, instead of actually acknowledging our awareness and moving with a different set of skills and making choices where we get to be totally present. Because for most of us, we haven't seen that done, and we've not seen ourselves do it. So that's scary AF, and we don't like to be scared, so we'd rather be angry, okay? So anger's got a lot of functions for us. And again, it's never wrong or bad. It's actually just to start to be curious about it, so we can get the message from it, so that we can move through it and beyond it, so we don't start destroying our actual physical health by holding this resonance of anger inside for so long. This is how we deal with feelings, is recognizing that dealing with feelings is a skill. Feelings aren't facts, they're just messengers, and start learning questions and tools for how to remain open and curious to them, so we get the information, acknowledge the awareness that's coming in, and then operate with a fuller, broader perspective. And so we have less collateral damage, less physical deterioration, and we start moving up that ladder of emotions a lot more quickly. This is what I love to talk about, obviously, because I'm already 4 minutes over our power hour. And I would love to be a guide, a facilitator, a coach for you so that you don't have to take as many left turns, do your Tasmanian devil twirly dizziness, create a lot of mess in your life. Like, let's clean up that shit so you don't have as much distraction, fewer excuses, to where you're actually feeling guided, supported, confident, happy, playful, curious, open. What are some of the other ones? Calm. Lots more gratitude, joyful, blissed out. That can be more of your reality. So if you're interested in that, let's talk. I'm actually also, it's from eons ago, even though it's copyrighted in 2023, a Dealing with Feelings PDF that I'll put a link to so that you can access that. It's a little bit of the same information, but sometimes having it in multiple formats helps really get it in, because I want to be here for you. I know how crazy, convoluted, confusing, overwhelming, and annoying these emotions can be, but the sooner that we come out of reaction to them, get the awareness of them, receive the messages, and move with them through them, we can go beyond them, and then more models like my amazing sister Shelly can come into our lives, and we can receive even more information of how to do this dancing act. It's not a tight wire balancing act, but how to dance with them, how to be us, more fully present, vulnerable, and in that way have a deeper, richer connection with ourselves, with our souls, with our heart's desires, a greater confidence that it's coming true, and these emotions are helping move us in that direction, and also having richer, deeper connections with other people, because we don't have to hide and mask ourselves because we know we've got our back. There it is, Dealing with Feelings. I love you so much, and I'm hoping you're getting a lot of self-love in this as well. I look forward to talking to you and seeing you in a Happiness Clinic program. Click the link to schedule a call for clarity, and until next time, I will see you next Power Hour, and I love you much. Mwah.